Hi, I'm Mike Bellevue. I'm the black powder editor for Guns of the Old West magazine. And in part two of our series on disassembling and cleaning Remington Cap and Ball revolvers, we're going to disassemble the action parts of the gun. In part one of the series, we took the cylinder itself apart and cleaned that. Now we're going to take out the insides and make everything spick and span. The next step is to take out the rammer assembly right here and the base pin because if you can see, this is flat on the bottom of the base pin up till this point where it goes back to round, and this actually catches on this screw. That's what keeps the base pin from getting lost. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this screw, and once it's out, we're going to be able to take out the loading lever and take out the entire base pin. Now, this is just something, we've seen this for a while. I've got a groove right here, and that's actually from gas cutting. This is right under the barrel, and that's from gas cutting over the years from firing it. So as you can see, it's actually cutting the steel. Now you'll notice this is blued underneath and it's not blued up here. That's because I polished this with 400 grit emery cloth to give me a little less friction on the cylinder. So I'm going to take these and just fold over a paper towel, throw them on, and all I'm going to do with this assembly is spritz it with ballistol and put it aside for now. I'll just wipe it off later and we'll be good to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disassemble the action. So I'm going to drop it back from half cock. Now the important thing is to have good fitting screwdrivers. I use a complete Brownell's Magna Tip set because you don't want to bugger up these screws. They are soft, as most Italian screws are. And now this whole procedure is different than a Colt. On a Colt, the trigger strap forms part of the grip assembly with the back strap, and you take everything off. With this, the trigger guard is held on by one screw. And I'm just going to put this down, and that is what makes your action parts accessible. So the next step in the process is to remove the trigger and bolt spring, and that's got this one large screw here, and I'm going to get in. It takes a very thin bladed but large screwdriver bit. So I'm going to put this down. In fact, what I'm going to do, you guys should be getting used to this. So I'm going to take a piece of paper towel. It's going to help me see all of that, but also get things going. Now this is also different than Colt. Colt would have two screws here, one for the trigger, one for the bolt. On Remingtons, there is just one. So I'm going to remove this screw, which is a screw pin, just like on a Colt. And you can see the trigger pops out. And now I'm just going to go in and kind of lift the bolt out because it's going to have a little bit of friction from the hammer. Okay, so now we've got the main action parts out except for the hammer. And this is another area where it differs from the Colt. And this is probably the trickiest area. So we're going to remove the grips. So there's this one big grip screw. I'm just going to take that out. Come on, grips. Do I not have the out? There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to put those grips aside. Okay, so we've got the mainspring, and that's captured by this tension spring, and it goes in a slot here. So what we've got to do is we've got to back off the tension on the mainspring. And you can see that screw is no longer making contact with it. And at that point, if everything is wonderful, I can just pop this out. But of course everything's not wonderful. So some of them, the screw comes right out in your hand. I mean, the spring comes right out in your hand, and others it does not. If it does not, I'll try to capture this on camera. This is a very simple procedure. You can use a wood dowel, or I'm using a little steel pin. Now this is hard to show on camera, but I'm just going to put that pin on the spring, and I'm just going to tap it a little bit. And you can see that spring is just coming right out of its slot, and that's all I want to do. So this actually would come out in like one shot if I wasn't trying to balance it for the camera. But okay, so the spring's out, and now we can get the hammer out. And this is a little bit of a tricky procedure, just a little bit. But this is probably the one spot where if you don't know how this is done, you might end up scratching your head for quite a while about how you get the hammer out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the hammer screw, which is this big old screw right here. So I'm just going to take that out. Okay, now that frees the hammer up. Now what I need to do is push the hammer down to the bottom of the frame, and it'll stop right there. Now on a Colt, the hand has a pin on it that goes into the hammer, and on a Remington that is different. The Remington, the hand has a screw on it, and we're going to remove that screw. So I'm just going to take this screw out, because the trick is, once I get this out, is that the hand comes out through the bottom of the frame. There we go, just pulls right out. So we've got the hand. But you can't get the hammer out that way. I'll show you. It does not go. The hammer just pulls right out of the top. Whoop. And that's it. So I'm going to spray these parts down with Ballistol, wipe them off. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray this whole frame with Ballistol, and I'm going to give a squirt inside the bore. Just take a piece of paper towel. I'm going to go over the outside of the frame just to get any powder residue off of it. So I'm going to clean up the whole outside of the frame while I've got a little bit in the bore working. Alright, so now I've got my cleaning rod, and now I changed out the 44 caliber jag for a 45 caliber jag. I'm going to take a patch, I'm going to spritz it with my Ballistol and water. Now with a Colt you can clean from the back of the barrel because the whole assembly comes apart. You can't do that with this because of the solid frame. So we're going to go from the front. Alright, and we got a big pile of filth here. So we're going to do a couple of patches. I'm going to go with a dry patch now. Alright, so we're still filthy. So I'm just going to keep going until that comes out clean. So all the parts that I had spritzed with Ballistol have now been wiped clean. All the fouling's off of them. They're dried off. And we're ready to reassemble a gun, which basically is just the reverse process that we just went through. So we're going to take the hammer, put it back in through the top, and drop it down on the bottom. And I kind of line this flat piece up with this cut here for this. Now, the most annoying thing about this is generally getting the hand in, which sometimes goes well and sometimes doesn't. What I do to make life easier on myself is I take a set of stones and I smooth out that hand slot in the frame, make sure there's no burrs or anything like that on it, when I first get the gun. And that way I know everything's going to slide in there and it's not going to hang up. So now we replace that little screw. And now we've got to push that back up into its slot. There we go. Okay, so once we got that, we've got to line up the hammer again. And all this is a little bit more problematic than it is on a Colt, only because that hand is under spring tension. So I just need I'm gonna try to, there we go. Alright, now I'm going to get the screw in. I'm going to try not to cut myself on the gun. There we go. It just requires a little bit of pushing and jiggling around, which is kind of hard when you're trying to wrap your hands around a camera tripod while you're doing it. But in normal life when you're doing it, it won't be very hard at all. So now the hand and hammer are back in, and we can do the action parts. And the first action part to go back in is going to be the bolt. So we're just going to slide that in, he said. Got to get it kind of up. There we go. Get it up on the hammer. And then the trigger has to go in. There you go, in the right direction. Okay, then we've got that one screw pin. We'll get it in and capture them, and we are going to be good. There we go. I'm sorry for any of this that's moved off the camera. It is hard to keep it framed, look at the viewfinder, and look at the work, and make it go in. Okay, so we're good on that. Now, the next step is to lay in our bolt and trigger return spring. All right, get that where it's got to be. Take the screw for it. Use these magnetic tips, which sometimes make life easy and sometimes they make them hard. And I'm going to try to capture that in there. And get in that little hole. Torque it down good. Okay, doop, 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 all that's working. Right, bolt goes down, hand comes up, trigger locks in, bolts up, everything is excellent. So now we can cover this back up with our brass trigger guard. There's a little, like a little boss over here that goes into a slot in the frame. So it always lines up exactly where it's supposed to be. You don't need to worry. And we'll pop her in, get our screwdriver on it, and there we are. Okay, having done that, the last step that I do is to put the spring back in. So first you got to get the spring up under the hammer and then kind of slide it into this slot. And as I said, some of them, they go right in, and some springs are a little bit tough. So I'm just going to take my plastic mallet, and I'm going to put it in. There we go. So, quite easy, really. There we go. Everything is lined up right. Alright, so now I'm going to tension the spring by turning this screw right here on the front. Tension it. Okay. And we don't need much. I'll get the grips back on. Let's not make this too hard. There we go. Alright. Get the screw in. Get them good and tight, but not so tight that we crack the grip. Alright, gun is now functioning. So, I'm going to slide the base pin back in with the flat part of the pin on the bottom. Pop the loading lever back in so that that screw hole lines up. And we'll work the screw in. There we go. Tighten her up. Okay, now, last step. I'm going to put some ballast oil on the pin. Give it a little lubrication. I'm going to take the cylinder, put it in. Now, you can see right here is a hand. All right, the trick to getting these cylinders in easy is to give it just like a little quarter turn clockwise to move the hand up out of the way, and then you can get it in and we're good. All right, there we go. All back together, fully functional.